Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the small town of Harrisonville, routine seemed immutable. The quiet streets, neighborhood businesses, and local military base gave residents a sense of security. Yet behind this peaceful facade, tensions between civilians, law enforcement, and the military had been simmering for years, often stemming from misunderstandings and conflicts of authority. That morning, the sun was rising slowly over Harrisonville. Police Captain Ryan Mitchell, 28, an ambitious but impulsive young officer, patrolled the sensitive area around the military base. His gaze rested on every vehicle, every passerby, looking for the slightest anomaly to latch onto and demonstrate his authority. Ryan was known for his explosive temper and impatience, and some colleagues whispered that he wasn't cut out to handle delicate situations. On the military side, Angela Turner, a respected 45-year-old colonel, was already on her way to an important meeting. A disciplined and composed woman, she embodied professionalism and military rigor. Her colleagues feared and admired her in equal measure, and no one doubted her authority on the base. What seemed like an ordinary day would change in a matter of seconds. A simple misunderstanding between an impulsive police officer and a military superior would trigger an incident that would resonate throughout the city, shatter careers, and leave an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Harrisonville's apparent calm was about to explode. The Harrisonville sun hadn't yet reached its zenith when Ryan Mitchell patrolled the military base. His eyes scanned every vehicle, every suspicious movement. He liked to feel in control, but on this day, something inside him was already on edge. In the distance, he spotted a black car driving through the restricted area. His fingers tightened on the handlebars. Another person not following the rules. He muttered, his tone laced with irritation. The driver got out of the car, Colonel Angela Turner. Her steps were steady, her posture straight, and her expression impassive. Ryan felt his blood boil. What is she doing here? She has no respect for anything, he thought. Without thinking, Ryan pulled out his gun. Hands up, he shouted, his voice echoing across the deserted parking lot. Angela stopped, surprised but calm. She slowly raised her hands. Officer Mitchell, lower your weapon. I'm Colonel Angela Turner from the base. I'm authorized to be here. Ryan, blinded by his impulse, wouldn't listen. Don't move. You could be a threat, he yelled, ignoring the shocked looks of his colleagues and passing civilians. Angela took a deep breath, her voice firm but controlled. You're putting me in danger and breaking every rule of conduct, Mitchell. Lower your weapon immediately. At that moment, two of Ryan's colleagues ran over, trying to calm the situation. One of them whispered, Ryan, it's not her, you have to stop. But Ryan, too proud and too impulsive, didn't move. The gun remained pointed. A few seconds that seemed like hours passed, until Angela, without losing her composure, uttered a sentence that will remain etched in Ryan's memory. You are supposed to protect, not threaten. Always remember that. These words made Ryan falter. His hands trembled, the weapon almost slipped from his fingers. He finally understood the gravity of his mistake, but the damage was done. A passerby had filmed the entire scene. Within hours, the video would make the rounds in Harrisonville and spark a media storm Ryan wasn't ready to face. Minutes after the incident, the tension in the parking lot was palpable. Ryan Mitchell's fellow officers surrounded Colonel Angela Turner, while Ryan, still in shock, tried to compose himself. Mitchell, put your weapon down now. One of his colleagues ordered, his voice trembling but firm. Ryan hesitated for a moment, his hands still clenched. Finally, the weapon fell heavily to the ground. He stepped back, unable to speak. Angela Turner, however, remained upright, her gaze cold and piercing. I'm going to have to report this incident immediately, she said calmly, but every word sounded like a judgment. A few passers-by, who had witnessed the scene, approached. One of them whispered, he really pointed a gun at her, it's crazy. Meanwhile, the video filmed by a passerby was already beginning to circulate on social media. Within hours, it would reach thousands of people, sparking outrage and debate. At the police, the district chief was alerted. In his office, he called Ryan. "Mitchell, you are suspended immediately. Your conduct is unacceptable. Prepare your explanation for the internal investigation." Ryan felt his heart sink. He knew his career was at stake. But more than that, he understood that the anger and impulsiveness that had driven him would cost him dearly. Angela Turner, for her part, contacted her superiors at the military base. She calmly explained the situation, insisting that she had been threatened but had remained calm. Her precise and controlled words would play a key role in the subsequent investigation. Local media picked up the story the next morning. "Police officer points gun at female colonel at military base," ran the headlines. Social media exploded with videos, comments, and heated debates about Ryan's security, authority, and behavior. Ryan, alone in his car after the suspension, stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Panic and shame mingled with fear. He had crossed a line no one could ignore. This day, which had begun as a routine patrol, would mark an irreversible turning point in his life. The day after the incident, Harrisonville was in turmoil. Local newspapers carried the following headlines on their front pages: "Police officer points a gun at a colonel." The viral video circulated across all social media, accumulating millions of views and comments. Ryan Mitchell, now suspended, had been summoned for an internal investigation. In the district chief's office, he sat tensely, unable to meet the gaze of his superiors. "Mitchell," the chief began, his voice deep. "Your behavior yesterday was unacceptable. Pointing a weapon at a female military superior is a violation of all rules of conduct. Tell me what came over you." Ryan, his voice trembling, tried to justify himself. I thought there was a threat. I wanted to protect the base." "You endangered a colonel's life and your own too," the chief interrupted. "The military base is demanding a full investigation, and the whole city is already talking about it. There's no excuse for this." Meanwhile, Angela Turner continued her efforts with the military hierarchy. She wrote a detailed report, describing in detail how calm she had remained and how Ryan had lost his temper. Her superiors were impressed by her professionalism. Harrisonville's military and civilian communities were quickly alerted. Many praised Angela's handling of the situation, while others questioned Ryan's behavior. Social media went wild. Some defended him, citing stress and pressure, but most condemned his impulsiveness. In his apartment, Ryan watched the video. Shock and shame overwhelmed him. The comments, sometimes harsh, reminded him that his career was in ruins and the trust of his colleagues shattered. He realized that this wasn't just a suspension, his reputation was destroyed, and he might never regain his place on the force. A few days later, the internal investigation revealed an additional fact: Ryan had already been reported for impulsive behavior on several occasions, but no major disciplinary action had been taken. This case would now count against him. The police officer realized his life had changed dramatically. One decision, one moment of arrogance and panic, and he would have been on the brink of disaster. Angela Turner, meanwhile, continued her duties, admired for her composure and poise. Harrisonville had just experienced an incident that would mark the town and serve as a lesson to all: impulsiveness and arrogance come at a price, and sometimes that price is irreversible. Days after the incident, Ryan Mitchell could no longer bear the silence imposed by his suspension. Every notification on his phone seemed like a cruel reminder of his mistake. Messages, articles, videos, everything pointed to his impulsive act. Sitting in his living room, staring at his computer screen, Ryan muttered under his breath. "They don't understand. I was just doing my job." His anger, mixed with shame, was boiling. He then decided to post a statement on social media, hoping to defend his version of events. In a clumsy and rushed message, he wrote, "Yesterday, I acted under stress and fear. I had no intention of causing harm. I asked that the situation be understood from my perspective. But the reaction was immediate. Internet users criticized his statement, pointing out that pointing a gun at a military superior was unacceptable, no matter how stressful. Local newspapers now carried the headlines, "Ryan Mitchell tries to justify his actions after threatening a colonel." At the police station, his colleagues were divided. Some supported him timidly, citing the pressures of police work. Others strongly condemned him, denouncing the irresponsibility of his actions. The district chief summoned Ryan once more. "Mitchell," he began, his gaze cold. "You're only making things worse with these messages. Your behavior is inexcusable. You must accept the consequences of your actions." Ryan felt an intense frustration wash over him. He had always believed his colleagues would recognize his dedication and intentions. But he painfully realized that his excuses and justifications could not erase the act itself. Meanwhile, Angela Turner continued her duties undisturbed by the media storm. Her calm and professional handling of the incident contrasted with Ryan's anger and agitation. Every interview and public statement reinforced her image as a leader of integrity and discipline. Ryan was slowly but surely beginning to realize that his police career was about to collapse. His anger was giving way to fear, fear of losing his job, fear of public embarrassment, fear of having destroyed his professional life in a few impulsive seconds. A few days later, the internal investigation into Ryan Mitchell revealed evidence that would change the course of the case. His superiors discovered a disturbing history, several complaints of impulsiveness and aggression, minor but recurring incidents, and warnings never followed by concrete sanctions. In a department room, the district chief examined the file gravely. He sighed. "Ryan, it's not just the incident with Angela Turner. There's a pattern. You've been warned multiple times and nothing has changed." Ryan, sitting across from him, felt his heart sink. With trembling hands, he whispered, I thought I could control the situation. I didn't know it was going to." The chief cut him off sharply. "No, Mitchell. You weren't thinking. You acted on impulse. And now you've endangered an Army colonel and the reputation of our service." The news spread quickly throughout the city. Local and national media highlighted not only the incident but also Ryan's history. Public opinion was even harsher. Citizens, outraged by the police officers' repeated behavior, demanded drastic measures. Angela Turner, however, remained calm. She knew the law and military protocol were on her side. She wrote a new report, detailing the video evidence, witness testimony, and Ryan's behavioral history. This document would play a central role in the disciplinary board's final decision. Ryan, isolated, began to feel a mixture of shame and fear. His initial anger at the system transformed into a deeper feeling, the fear of losing not only his job, but also his reputation, his career, and the trust of those who had believed in him. For the first time, he understood the gravity of his actions. A single impulse, a moment of arrogance, had been enough to turn his life upside down and expose his flaws. Harrisonville watched, stunned, as a promising police officer had been plunged into oblivion and shame in a matter of seconds. Days after the internal investigation revealed his problematic past, Ryan Mitchell felt his wounded pride push him to act. He decided to meet with Angela Turner, hoping to obtain some form of leniency or at least explain his intentions. He found her at the military base, under a gray sky that seemed to reflect her mood. Ryan took a deep breath before knocking on the colonel's office door. Angela opened it, surprised but impassive. "Colonel Turner. I wanted to." Ryan stammered, his hands shaking. Angela cut him off firmly. "Mitchell. I don't have time for your justifications. I remind you that you pointed a gun at me and that triggered a disciplinary investigation. I advise you to leave." Ryan felt his anger rising, but he tried to remain polite. "I just wanted to explain. I didn't want to." Angela stared at him, her eyes reflecting unwavering authority. "You can't explain what can't be excused. You've lost control. It's not me you should be convincing, Mitchell. It's your superiors and the disciplinary committee." At that moment, Ryan realized the magnitude of his mistake. Everything he could do to save his career was already beyond his reach. He looked down in shame as Angela calmly returned to her work, oblivious to his presence. Before leaving, he whispered almost to himself. I guess I lost everything. Angela Turner, without looking up, simply replied. You only lose what you yourself have betrayed. As he left, Ryan felt for the first time that his efforts to justify himself were futile. He was alone to face the consequences of his impulsiveness. Harrisonville, and especially the military base, were now observing how a moment of anger could ruin a promising career. From that day on, Ryan began to understand that his pride and impulse had been his worst enemies. And that no amount of explanation could undo what he had done. A few weeks after the incident, the disciplinary commission met in the Harrisonville Police Department's main hall. The air was thick with tension and whispers. Ryan Mitchell sat tensely across from the commission members, flanked by his attorneys. The chairman of the committee, a man in his 60s named Thomas Caldwell, spoke in a deep voice. We are here to rule on the conduct of Officer Ryan Mitchell, which occurred on date of incident. After reviewing the file, videos, witness statements, and disciplinary history, the commission is ready to render its decision. Ryan felt his heart sink. He'd imagined several scenarios, a simple reprimand, a prolonged suspension. But never the outcome that was coming. Thomas Caldwell continua. The board concluded that pointing a weapon at a military superior constitutes a serious and irreversible violation of the rules of conduct. In addition, Mr. Mitchell's history demonstrates a repeated pattern of impulsiveness and aggression, despite warnings received. Silence hung in the room. Ryan bowed his head, unable to answer. Therefore, the commission decides to immediately remove Mr. Mitchell from his position with the Harrisonville Police Department. This decision is effective immediately. A murmur rippled through the room. Ryan felt the world collapse around him. His hands trembled, his legs seemed to refuse to carry him. He had lost everything he had worked for years. Angela Turner, present to testify, observed the scene with imperturbable calm. Her presence alone reminded Ryan of the gravity of his action. She had nothing to say, the commission's decision already reflected her own authority and mastery of the situation. As Ryan left the room, dejected and ashamed, he realized that anger and impulsiveness had led to his downfall. Harrisonville had just witnessed the fall of a promising police officer, a victim of his own ego. Outside, reporters waited. Cameras captured his silent departure, the dismissal now official. Ryan knew he would have to rebuild his life from scratch, that his reputation and career were destroyed. And in the quiet of her office, Angela Turner resumed her routine, a symbol of composure and discipline, showing everyone that self-control and professionalism always prevail over impulsiveness and arrogance. The day after Ryan Mitchell's dismissal, Harrisonville was abuzz. Local and national newspapers carried the story on their front pages. Police officer points a gun at a colonel, immediate dismissal. Harrisonville shocked by young officer's impulsiveness. Social media was exploding. Hundreds of thousands of views were recorded on the video of the incident, and thousands of comments filled with outrage and support. Some internet users tried to justify Ryan, the stress of the job, he didn't know what to do, but the majority denounced his behavior, judging it unacceptable that an officer should endanger the life of a military superior. At City Hall, Mayor David Hastings issued a statement. We fully support the disciplinary commission's decision. The safety of our law enforcement officers and respect for military authorities are essential. Harrisonville will not tolerate such behavior. On the streets, residents chatted passionately. Some understood the pressure being put on Ryan, while others saw only abuse of power and dangerous arrogance. Local media conducted interviews with passers-by, each expressing their opinions on safety and police accountability. Ryan, meanwhile, found himself alone facing the media storm. Every notification on his phone was a sting, articles, commented videos, messages from colleagues and former friends. He realized that not only was his career over, but his reputation throughout the city and beyond was seriously damaged. Angela Turner, for her part, was hailed as a model of composure and professionalism. In all interviews and statements, she emphasized the importance of remaining calm in critical situations and of following procedures. This strengthened her image among the military and civilian communities. For Ryan, it was a moment of forced introspection. Anger gave way to shame and fear of the future. He understood that his impulsiveness and arrogance had led him to a point of no return. Harrisonville now remembered him not as a promising officer, but as an example of what one should never become. A few weeks after his discharge, Ryan Mitchell lived alone in his Harrisonville apartment, far from the sirens, the uniforms, and the gaze of others. The silence weighed on him, broken only by the buzzing of his phone and the clicking of notifications that served as constant reminders of his failure. Sitting on his couch, he stared at the wall, lost in thought. Every frame from the video of the incident replayed in his mind, along with the online comments and news articles. The anger that had driven him was gone, replaced by a deep sense of shame. He remembered the events, his hand clenched on the gun, Angela Turner's impassive gaze, the whispers of his colleagues. It all seemed surreal now, and yet the consequences were very real. His career was destroyed, his reputation ruined, and his pride shattered. Ryan picked up a notebook and began to write. Each word expressed his frustration, his fear, but also a glimmer of clarity he had never felt before. I lost everything in a matter of seconds. My impulsiveness, my arrogance, they betrayed me. I have to understand why I acted this way. I have to change. For the first time, he admitted his flaws. This wasn't just an isolated incident, it was the result of months, even years, of impulsive behavior and poor choices. Reflection led him to recognize that self-control, discipline, and respect for others were essential, and that these values had been lacking in his life. Ryan understood that rebuilding his life would take a long time. He couldn't simply return to the force or clear his name. He would have to learn, grow, and perhaps, one day, regain some respect, but never the respect he had lost in Harrisonville. Meanwhile, Angela Turner continued her service, undistracted by the media coverage of the incident. Her example of composure and professionalism remained etched in the community's minds and stood in stark contrast to Ryan's fall. For Ryan, the lesson was clear: self-control and respect for authority are not options, but obligations. And every mistake, especially one born of impulsiveness, has a price you must be prepared to pay. A few months after the incident, Harrisonville had moved on, but the memory of that day remained vivid. For the city, the Ryan Mitchell case had become an example of what can happen when impulsiveness and arrogance take over. Ryan, now removed from the police department, lived a quieter but reflective life. Every day was a reminder that his actions had irreversible consequences. He had begun a long process of self-rebuilding, taking stress management classes, working with a mentor to improve his behavior, and reflecting deeply on what it truly meant to serve and protect. Angela Turner, for her part, continued her military service with undiminished professionalism. Her reputation as a calm and fair leader had grown, and her example was used in training on crisis management and law enforcement behavior. Young officers and members of the military base admired her not only for her composure, but also for her ability to transform a moment of danger into a lesson in authority and discipline. One day, Ryan happened to bump into a group of police recruits at a training workshop. He silently observed their enthusiasm, their sometimes awkward gestures. And he found himself thinking, if only I had learned this lesson earlier. Harrisonville, too, had learned that safety and compliance were not abstract concepts. Citizens understood that professionalism and discipline were essential to protecting life and maintaining trust in institutions. And for Ryan, the most important lesson was personal. He had learned, at a high price, that self-control and respect for others are values that no amount of arrogance can replace. His road to redemption had only just begun, and he knew it would take time to regain even a fraction of the confidence he had lost. In the city's restored calm, Angela Turner continued to walk confidently, a symbol of composure and integrity. And Ryan, in his silence, reflected daily on the mistake that had changed his life forever.